June marks the beginning of summer recruiting, a time where all of your high school recruits normally set a few official visits, take some unofficial ones, and just look at their multitude of options. And that, because Ohio State has a ton of highly touted kids that will be visiting them anywhere from a week from now to the end of June, combined with some NIL news regarding Ohio State football. Ryan Day, a day or so ago, brought up the monetary needs in order to keep his football program intact. This has all prompted me to make an Ohio State video. I'm going to be reading two articles today, one from usatoday.com regarding Ryan Day's statement on NIL and the monetary needs for his football program, another one by 24/7 Sports discussing 6 top Ohio State targets that are making official visits to other schools, because Ohio State's official visit I don't think starts until June 10th, which is a Friday. Talking about some 6 top target guys for Ohio State football, and then I'll also go over Ohio State's current recruiting class. It's number 4 in the nation, 10 commits, the majority of them are 4 stars. So if you like Ohio State content, you like Big Ten content, or even just college football content all across the board, make sure to hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so you can get notified when I make videos, whether it is on Ohio State football or not, and comment your thoughts down below about name, image, and likeness and how you think it is going to affect recruiting. Whether it's Ohio State recruiting, if you're a Buckeye fan, or recruiting for another school or just college football in general, if you want to speak about that, I guess. So without further ado, let's get right into it and start off with Ryan Day. Ryan Day telling us that he needs $13 million in NIL money to maintain the Ohio State football roster. Ohio State needs $13 million through name, image, and likeness deals to maintain its football roster beyond next season. Now, this was reported by many different people about a day or so ago, but I had another video to make, so I didn't exactly get to this, didn't know exactly if I wanted to talk about it, but at the end of the day, I decided, why not mesh this in with recruiting. Ohio State's current roster, at least the starters, and I'm going to list this because it'll put this in perspective, because $13 million sounds like a lot. But when you look at the talent on Ohio State's roster, it puts this into perspective. At quarterback, you have C.J. Stroud, you have Kyle McCord, you have Devin Brown. Each of them, according to at least one site, well, not C.J. Stroud, but Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, according to at least one site, were 5 stars. McCord was a 5-star by most. Devin Brown was a higher level 4-star. Same with C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud just had the best quarterback rating according to ESPN last year. I think he was second in the nation in passer rating as well. 3 big-time, highly raw talented coming out of high school quarterbacks, and one of them might be the best in the nation in C.J. Stroud. At running back, you have Trevion Henderson, 5-star, highly praised coming out of high school. He showed you why this past season, and then backing him up are Mayan Williams and Evan Pryor, who look pretty talented too. At wide receiver, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, Julian Fleming, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, and then you have incoming freshman Caleb Brown, who was highly rated out of high school. Egbuka was a 5-star, same with Julian Fleming, and I believe Jackson Smith and Jigba coming out of high school. So a lot of talent there. Donovan Jackson on the offensive line was a 5-star. Paris Johnson Jr., Luke Whippler, Matthew Jones, DeJuan Jones, that's the offensive line, Cade Stover at tight end. You have a lot of raw talent and a lot of high-profile guys who are going to have futures in the NFL, or at least get tryouts in the NFL. So a lot of talent there, and with name, image, and likeness, the more talent you have, because more schools are going to be going after that talent, and really they're going to be tampering, while the prospects in school, they're going to be getting guys to sell them. name, image, and likeness deals. And by sell, I mean really, there's just not really a better word for it. They're going to sell them an idea. They're going to sell them money to come to their school, whether it's USC, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Texas, whether it's Texas A&M. So the more talent you have on your roster in Ohio State's offense and defense, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison, I think all of those are 3 5-star edge rushers. More talent you have, the more schools are going to go after that talent, and therefore you need to put more money toward those players to keep them home. It's becoming more and more like professional football. That's the 8-figure estimate, going back to the article that Coach Ryan Day provided to about 100 business people at an NIL event held at the Covelli Center Thursday. Ryan Day is essentially telling the boosters, the NIL collectives, that you need to take this seriously, because this is becoming an arms race. You need to continue to pump in the money, and not just pump in the money, but pump the numbers, pump the amount of money that's going into Ohio State and into the players up. His comments were reported by Cleveland.com after he spoke as part of a panel that included Athletic Director Gene Smith and Senior Associate Athletic Director Kerry Hoyt, who oversees the school's NIL administration. Opportunities for players to make money through NIL opportunities are seen as one of the leading factors behind the sharp increase of transfers throughout the sport this season. Another Big Ten example of this is Charlie Jones. Many are saying he's transferring to Purdue, and many are saying it's NIL motivated. Look at Nebraska, a team that I talk about a lot and I am unapologetically high on, entering 2022. They have one of the better NIL collectives and NIL programs in the nation. It's why they took Ochaun Mathis out of Texas's backyard, and he didn't want anything to do with Texas. Part of that was probably because Nebraska also had better defensive reputation, but I guarantee you an even bigger part of that is something that Casey Thompson said months before, that Nebraska has better NIL opportunities than a program as large and historically good and as booster funded as Texas. Texas is a very wealthy program, and Nebraska has just found a way through NIL to make itself even richer, which is kind of what NIL does if you use it correctly. It's going to make the rich richer, which is why Ryan Day he just publicly put it out there. Hey, I need $13 million, because Ohio State's boosters can totally provide that. There's no doubt about it. Those schools are prohibited by the NCAA from using deals as recruiting inducements for transfers or high school prospects. Enforcement has been slow. Basically, enforcement's been completely non-existent. I mean, what Nick Saban said about Texas A&M, there's no proof that Texas A&M used this, but I'm 99% sure that without NIL, A&M would not have the best class ever in 24/7 sports history after an 8-4 year where they opted out of their bowl game, where they got humiliated by Ole Miss and Mississippi State, where they nearly lost to a Colorado team that was feckless in just about every way. You get the point. NIL is huge, and as Lane Kiffin has said, it's the number one thing that recruits are thinking about now when choosing a school. Day speculated at Thursday's event that Buckeye players could put their names in the transfer portal at the end of a season and be swayed by offers elsewhere. The NCAA's one-time transfer exception, which was expanded to all sports last spring, also provides them with immediate eligibility. One phone call, and they're out the door, Day said, and I couldn't put it better myself. We cannot let that happen at Ohio State. I'm not trying to sound the alarm. I'm just trying to be transparent about what we're dealing with. Day said his estimate was based off conversations with recruits and their families, and it factors in rates for specific positions, including $2 million for premier quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud and his backup and his third stringer. They're all probably going to be premier quarterbacks, and all of them were out of high school. Keep in mind Quinn Ewers, the deal that he got there. This is not just for starters. This is factoring backups too. $1 million for top offensive tackles and pass rushers. Honestly, That makes me smile because I thought that as a result of NIL, your offensive linemen and D linemen wouldn't be treated as well because they're not as recognized as your quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. It makes me happy to see that offensive linemen can make $1 million. Since compensation became permissible last July, players have earned NIL money from companies offering endorsement deals and university-specific collectives, which are funded by boosters and typically offer partnerships with local charities or nonprofits. The $13 million goal would involve both. A pair of collectives supporting Ohio State formed earlier this year, known as The Foundation and the Cohesion Foundation. They are set up to pay Buckeye football players for working with charitable organizations. It's unclear how much money they have raised to date, though real estate developer Brian Schottenstein has said he aims for the foundation to become the largest NIL fund in the country after launching it in March. And the article just conveniently crashed, so hold up. But anyway, this all, just looking at this, and, $13 million, again, with the businesses that Ohio State has. Columbus, when I think of Columbus, I just think of Ohio State football. Cincinnati, yes, is rising up, but there's truly only one majorly elite or majorly powerful program in college football that is in Ohio, and that's Ohio State. In Michigan, you have Michigan State and Michigan. In Alabama, you have, Alabama, but you do also have Auburn. In Florida, for example, you have Miami, you have Florida State, you have UF, just plainly Florida. Going back to the article, Ohio State athletes from all 36 varsity sports have earned nearly $3.5 million in NIL compensation over the last 11 months, the most in the country, the athletic department announced Thursday. Again, and I made a video on that a few months ago about how Ohio State's NIL, the amount that they've paid, like their offerings aren't necessarily on par with some of the SEC offerings to high school recruits, but the amount they've paid, the resume they're building, and the reputation they're building for payouts is one of the better ones in the country. And this should spur other Big Ten teams to action, because this, like Ohio State getting big into NIL and putting tens of millions of dollars toward it, means that the recruiting gap is likely only going to widen between Ohio State and the rest of the conference. And I'm saying this just after another blue blood program in Michigan just beat them. And yet after Michigan beating them, because of the different reactions of the two programs to NIL, Michigan just beat the Buckeyes, won the Big Ten, and they didn't beat the Buckeyes on this controversial play. They beat them by 15 points and dominated that team. And yet, Ohio State might further pull away in the talent and recruiting department because of Michigan's slow approach to the NIL happenings, and Ohio State's quicker approach. I mean, Jim Harbaugh just came out and said that Michigan's not a transactional experience, it's a transformational one. And while I like that statement, because I do want Michigan to be more of a developmental transformational experience than us just paying everyone we can to come here, I want Michigan to also step forward in the NIL world and be one of the bigger programs when it comes to NIL deals, because it's the only way we're going to get high-tier level talent, and if we pair that with development and the transformational experience, you can get the best of both worlds. But there's nothing of that coming out of Michigan. Ryan Day just came forward, was honest, and said, hey, we need $13 million. And probably, although this wasn't reported, there's probably going to have to be more in the future if Ohio State wants to keep itself where it has been over the past 20 years. So that's a little bit about NIL, but now we're going to step into recruiting, because that's honestly where, in a certain sense, this leads to. Ohio State is in the top 3, 5, 10, whatever you call it. They're in the running for 6 big-time prospects, and I'm going to read an article by 24/7 Sports. Bill Kurilik. 6 top Ohio State targets making official visits elsewhere this weekend, and where the Buckeyes stand with them. And the Buckeyes being able to stand with these prospects is in part due to their reputation, but also in part due to name, image, and likeness. We've seen schools that have not been anywhere close to being in the running for top prospects land top prospects, like Tennessee landing that 5-star quarterback, and like Texas A&M just out of nowhere landing, 7 or 8 5-stars? NIL's a game changer, so Ohio State still being in the running for several 5-stars and high 4-stars, still getting crystal balls right now in the spring and summer months, whereas Michigan, Michigan State, a lot of other Big Ten programs, except for Penn State. I don't know how Penn State's recruiting as well as they are, but they are. A lot of Big Ten recruiting has been quiet. It's been dead. Nebraska's been active, but with 3 and 4 stars, mainly because of new coaching staff, a little bit of limited reputation as Scott Frost doesn't have a winning record. Ohio State, recruiting-wise, is in by a mile the best position in the Big Ten, large part due to their reputation and NIL. So let's talk about the 6 top Ohio State targets that are taking visits elsewhere, who in the next few weeks will take visits to Ohio State most likely, and where they stand with the Buckeyes. The first one-day 2022 camp for the Buckeyes was on June 1st, a Wednesday. There will be 2 more Ohio State Day 1 camps on Monday, June 6th, and Tuesday, June 7th. There will be many recruits all over the country making official visits this weekend, but the Ohio State staff starts their official visits the weekend of June 10th. June 17th will be a bigger official visit for the Buckeyes. Then June 24th will be an absolutely huge Ohio State official visit weekend, giving the Buckeyes the last summer shot on many top recruits. But in the meantime, there will be some very important Buckeye targets making official visits elsewhere this weekend. Today, Bucknuts, it's the 24/7 sports website for Buckeye football, looks at 6 of those recruits, including why Bucknuts has included the recruit today, where the Buckeyes stand, and what the crystal ball currently says for each recruit. First and foremost, defensive back Caleb Downs from Georgia, number 9 nationally. He is the number 1 ranked safety. The official visit this weekend is to the Georgia Bulldogs, which seems to be either Georgia or Ohio State who's going to get him. He's officially visiting Ohio State June 24th. This weekend's official visit is important because Downs is a huge Ohio State target and is currently visiting his home state school, who has quite the reputation for producing defensive players, especially in the past year, if you didn't watch the NFL draft. There are currently no crystal ball picks for Downs, but the writer of the article says that the Buckeyes are a serious contender, and he continues to think Downs likely ends up at Ohio State or Georgia, who seem to be the schools that Downs is the warmest toward. Up next is Brandon Inniss from Florida, and he plays at American Heritage, which is funny to me because my aunt teaches there, but just a little fun fact. His official visit this weekend is to Alabama. He visits Ohio State June 17th. Him going to Ohio State would be massive because a 5-star wide receiver developed by Brian Hartline will just allow Ohio State to continually reload at the wide receiver position. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, some of the greatest wide receivers in college football, just got drafted as first-round picks in the NFL, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Julian Fleming or Emeka Egbuka look to immediately replace them and likely do as well as they did. Jackson Smith-Njigba was Ohio State's leading receiver in total yards last year, and he wasn't nearly as talked about as Olave and Wilson were heading into 2021. He was widely considered as the third man. Brandon Inniss is currently crystal balled to USC and Ohio State, and the writer of this article says that if he had to make a pick for Inniss right now, he would go with the Buckeyes. Up next would be Tackett Curtis, a linebacker out of Louisiana, and his official visit this weekend is Wisconsin. and his visit to Ohio State is June 24th. This weekend's visit is so important because early on, Wisconsin was considered by some to be the favorite to land him, and this is the first of likely just 3 official visits for the hard-hitting linebacker, Curtis, and he is crystal balled to Ohio State, 2 predictions, and both of those are to the Buckeyes, so he's only crystal balled to the Buckeyes, and the writer of this article is one of the people who crystal balled him to Ohio State. Next is running back Justice Haynes out of Georgia, and his official visit this weekend is to Georgia. Much like defensive back Caleb Downs, he is visiting his in-state school, who just won a national title and is a powerhouse, and he is currently crystal balled to Georgia with 2 predictions in. Some don't give the Buckeyes much of a chance for Justice. The writer of this article is not in that camp. He doesn't think that there is any clear-cut leader, and he's told that the Buckeyes are certainly in it for him. We also have another wide receiver in Noah Rogers, who's visiting Clemson this week, who has had their struggles at the wide receiver position really just this past season, but it was sort of apparent in 2020. Big question marks surrounding that position this season in 2022. Same with quarterback and offensive line. He visits Ohio State, Rogers does, June 17th. This weekend's visit is important because the Buckeyes are the leader, but a huge recruiting weekend for Clemson. The Tigers could gain some traction. He has 7 crystal ball predictions, Noah Rogers does, to Ohio State, and that includes the writer of this article. And finally, Kayin Lee, another defensive back out of Georgia, who's visiting Nebraska this weekend, and he has not scheduled an official visit with Ohio State. Right now, this is the only official visit Lee has set to Nebraska, and the Buckeyes want to bring Lee into their 2023 recruiting class. Has been mainly crystal balled to Ohio State, with 3 of them to Ohio State. 1 of them is to Georgia. The writer of this article says that Lee plans to visit Ohio State in June, and he has him crystal balled to Ohio State. So these 6 guys, it looks like the majority of them are trending in the direction of Ohio State. Obviously, you have Caleb Downs, who seems to be split between Georgia and Ohio State. Brandon Inniss was considered a USC lean for quite some time. He was recruited by Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley was there, and was continued to be recruited by Lincoln Riley when he went to USC. But Ohio State's draft reputation caught his attention. Brian Hartline's a great recruiter, an even better developer. So Ohio State has a good chance to land those 2 5-stars, and the other 4 stars, Ohio State seems to be heavily their favorite, if I'm being honest here. And that's really all I have to say for this video, is just talking about recruiting. Ohio State currently has, just before we end this video, the number 4 overall recruiting class. They have 10 hard commits. Their top recruit is Luke Montgomery, an offensive tackle out of Ohio. Ty Lockwood is a tight end out of Tennessee. He's 129th in the country. Montgomery's 42nd. Joshua Padilla, an interior offensive lineman out of Ohio, who's ranked 170th nationally. Malik Hartford, a safety out of Ohio, ranked 173rd nationally. Dijon Johnson, a cornerback out of Florida, ranked 191st nationally. Mark Fletcher, a running back from American Heritage, so teammate of Brandon Inniss, he's ranked 199th nationally. Cedric Hawkins, a safety out of Florida, 214th nationally. Austin Seyerveld, an interior offensive lineman out of Ohio, 262nd nationally. Bryson Rogers, a wide receiver out of Florida, 305th nationally. And 478th nationally is Will Smith, a defensive lineman out of Ohio. 9 4-stars, 1 3-star. No 5-stars yet, but several 5-stars are in range for Ohio State to pick up. And that's all I have to say for this video about name, image, and likeness and recruiting regarding The Ohio State University. If you are new to this channel or have been watching it for a while, consider hitting that subscribe button, liking this video, and most importantly, because I love to engage with subscribers and college football fans, comment your thoughts on this video and on Ohio State regarding name, image, and likeness and recruiting down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.